I'm just going to go live. Going to hit record.
All right.
Because right after this, I'm playing Blades in the Dark.
After this, I guess I'm eating food.
Got to order some
And-
taco men. Don't feel like cooking.
We go to Hinamaru when we want ramen, so like
Yeah.
taco men is like meh. It's like,
Oh, I don't get the ramen. We order the rice bowls.
oh.
The rice bowls are crazy good.
That sounds good, actually.
Yeah, they're there's no one anywhere near us that has rice bowls that good. I highly recommend the chicken one or the Miyazaki chicken one.
Miyazaki chicken.
Yeah, it's basically chicken with like a cream sauce on it.
Okay.
All right, guess we're streaming. Everything's good, so I'll just launch in. I've got a marker here already for when the main bit starts. It's Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are talking about Lost Ruins of Arnak, a 2020 tabletop board game. So, yeah, coming straight into the new year. COVID is going crazy again. Like, we're fully locked down.
Crazy. I don't think people really understand how, ridiculous it is.
Oh, yeah, the number of positive cases in New York today was like nearly double the highest number on any day in the entire pandemic.
Not double. It's like 8 or 9 times what it's ever been ever. 8 or 9 times what it's ever been ever.
I was looking just at New York City specifically. If you look at the country,
it's 8 or 9 times what it's ever been ever. Like, if you look at the humps from the past. Like,
I was looking at hospitalizations.
Yeah, if you look at the humps from 2020, 2021, right? It's like those humps got up to like, thousands per day. It's now like 30, 40,000 per day.
Yep. Well, the biggest, saddest number was that nationally, we're already at 1 million new cases a day. And even though, like, a thing that I'm seeing a lot, especially among people who are justifying their terrible decision to go to MAGFest or ALA this coming weekend, is that, Omicron's more mild. But one thing that is not clear at all, and likely not mild, is the chance of having permanent consequences of catching Omicron.
Well, so first of all, there's a problem that people don't realize.
Well, also mild to a medical professional means we didn't have to intubate them.
Right. Doctors and the CDC have fucked up in using the word mild, right? It's like they use the word doctors. When they say the word mild, they mean like, oh, you didn't need surgery. You didn't need a ventilator.
Yeah, you know what the doctor said when I had a bicycle spoke go through my leg? It was a trivial wound.
Yep, exactly. It's like, so mild to a doctor means that you didn't need extreme medical interventions to survive and recover, right? But that does, but meanwhile, you could be sitting there, right? Like, gasping for breath with extreme pains and suffering and permanent consequences that affect you the rest of your life. And as long as the doctor didn't put you on a ventilator or have to give you a new lung or some shit, that counts as mild medically.
Yep.
Right? So they spread around that word mild, and now people, have the wrong impression. I blame the doctors, not the people, right? That, I guess it's not a big deal. It's like, no, it's a really fucking big deal. If you get sick, it's gonna suck ass. It's not just like you got some sniffles, right?
Yep.
It sucks at you.
Well, even worse, there's other things going on. Like now I'm not saying be a prepper and go down to the woods, but the last couple of rounds of this, like the 2 previous peaks, we had supply chain issues. Like you couldn't get toilet paper and flour for a while, but there weren't actually that many cases. Compared to what's happening now, where so many people are so sick they can't work, that the supply chain is probably more at risk now today than it was at any point in the pandemic up to this point. So
right, well, the original, right, in the old 2020, right, before pre-vaccine, right, there was more deaths. Right, but there was less cases because of more caution, and also because the virus was less evil. But
like, even if like this is treatable for a lot of people, there aren't enough hospital staff.
Right. Now we have vaccines which have decreased deaths. So it's like, yeah, if you're fully vaxxed and boosted, Are you gonna die? You could, but it's not super likely.
Yep. And pre-Omicron, it was also radically cutting off spread. Like there were practically no cases for a long period of time over the summer.
If you are unvaccinated, yeah, Omicron might kill you, actually.
Yep.
So don't.
Yeah, the difference
is super. Yeah,
the difference between being vaccinated and not vaccinated
to prevent dying, but is it gonna prevent you from getting sick? Also, yes, but less so than previously.
Yep.
Right?
Well, even more like beyond all of that, a big problem is going to be if a lot of people are sick and out of like whatever their jobs are, a lot of those jobs are going to not happen, which could be way worse than what happened the first 2 rounds. Also, if you get hurt for an unrelated reason, no one at the hospital is going to be able to help you. And on top of all that, one thing we do know is that if you're not boosted, you have very little relative protection against the Omicron variant specifically. You got to get that booster shot, especially if you didn't get an mRNA vaccine. Most of the world did not get mRNA vaccines. Like if you got AstraZeneca or J&J, you need an mRNA booster like with extreme urgency right now. And they are not widely available.
People who just got like one J&J, it's like they got like, as far as the doctors are concerned, they're like, well, that person got sick as it's like it barely helped them.
I'll say this, my company, my actual day job, their policy now is if you don't have a booster, you count as unvaccinated for all of our policies.
All right.
So my advice to you specifically is buy a tiny bit ahead on anything that you really need in your life, and don't go anywhere for the next month if you can avoid it. Especially don't go to MAGFest, CES, or ALA, which are all happening this weekend.
Go to any large gathering of human beings.
Yeah. I mean, Ontario just locked down. They closed all indoor dining, all gyms, all theaters, all venues.
Well, how come the whole world hasn't shut down? This is what I don't get.
The U.S. will absolutely not shut down.
Right. It's like, if I was just king of the world, I'd be like, look, every single person on Earth is on house arrest for 2 weeks, right? It's like, or 3 weeks even. If you just did that, it's like, okay, that
Scott, just doing that would literally be one of the single most challenging endeavors humans have ever done.
Yes, but
you would need an army. You would need literal armies of people who were going out to enforce it, to distribute supplies.
We have armies, and those armies aren't doing anything fucking useful, right? They're just conducting evil war. So let's have them put everyone in house arrest instead. And then when we're done, we can disband those armies, right? So regardless.
If you're going to disband those armies, then I just don't disband mine, and now I'm king of the world.
I'm king of the world already. The armies are listening.
How are you still king? Yeah, you don't have an army anymore. Now I'm king of the world. I have the only army.
I don't need to be king of the world anymore because I put everyone on Earth on house arrest for 3 weeks, and that eliminated not only COVID, right, but so much other disease and whatnot.
Yeah, but then I'm king of the world with my army. Also, the logistics of that are impossible. We've, like, in America, people just refused to follow the orders. Even when we had lockdowns, there were restaurants that were just like, fuck you, what are you going to do? Find me? And just opened.
Shoot them. Obviously not. Yeah, but I mean, you could still punish them in ways or coerce them or just take away your business license, right? It's like if it's a
the real problem, like the world,
no more restaurant.
The world is one thing, but if we just look at the United States, there's a much more pernicious problem in that our legislature, like the Congress of the United States, because of the Republicans specifically, literally can't pass any bill. So there's no way to pass any laws.
I mean, that's, it's like, yes, that's a problem we can bring up and blame everything in the world on that. But look, even in New York City, where the city council is majority of, Democratic women.
Yeah, because you didn't let me finish.
I was even shut the city down, right? We can't shut the city down. Which even
if we did that, the Supreme Court is also compromised, and they've been shooting down mandates and things left and right. Even if we ignored them and deployed the military, nearly half of America would refuse to comply and would require violent coercion, possibly.
I'm just saying, even very democratic places that are not compromised and, have democracy, and even other countries, right? It's like, Denmark's and Sweden's, right? These liberal, Finland, which just decided to go to 4-day work weeks.
No, Scott, that's fake news. That is bullshit. Don't stop spreading that lie. That is not true.
Okay, good. That's a fake news. Well,
that was literally a screenshot of an article that had a misleading headline that quoted something that person said years ago in an unrelated context. There are no plans for a 4-day work week. That is just bullshit. Absolutely.
That's a shame. But regardless, those places in Northern Europe are much more socialist than we are, and they're not locking down either, right?
But they are enacting a significant number of other measures, and they have much higher rates of people seeking out the vaccine. The U.S. has a specific problem in that there are people who refuse the vaccine all over the world. But in America, they are a huge, huge population who are also very powerful politically.
Well, maybe they won't be a huge population anymore.
I think that's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it except to hopefully enjoy the democracy that follows. Like, at some point...
Maybe.
Yeah, it's I saw a terrifying statistic that basically showed you can determine someone's likelihood of dying of COVID solely by knowing their zip code and whether or not they identify as a Democrat, Republican, or Independent. That's all you need to know, and you can have an extremely accurate prediction of their likelihood of getting COVID and or dying of COVID.
Yeah, things in general in the world, right, there's causational factors. If you know some factors, you know.
Yep. But I guess the broad thing is we're beyond the point as a society where we're going to have a near-term societal solution to this, meaning it sucks, but you're kind of on your own and you've got to protect yourself. You cannot rely on institutions to protect you, and you're going to have to do whatever you need to do to stay safe.
You don't have to rely on yourself. You might not be able to rely on institutions, but you can rely on each other, right?
Yep.
Just not your institutional each other, your community each other.
Yep. But that means things like don't ever, literally do not, I haven't been inside a restaurant since the week after PAX East 2020.
Yeah, 2020, early 2020.
We went to Kenka, and that was the last time I've been in a restaurant.
Well, I've been inside restaurants to grab a bag that had food in it and then walk out immediately.
I did that once or twice the whole quarantine. We wouldn't even do that. We just delivered.
Oh, one time I was in a restaurant that had the entire front of the restaurant was open because.
Is that the Huntress? We did do that once because the Huntress was just an open wall.
And I was sitting literally on the edge of the inside.
Yeah, I bet that we sat at the exact same spot. Oh, and once we ate outdoors in the doorway of a giant open garage door in Brooklyn at an outdoor restaurant over the summer when cases were basically zero.
Yeah, effectively garage door, right?
Yeah.
Situation. I mean,
but yeah,
I went to 2 hockey games, but then I
know
don't anymore.
That's the thing that I think this is part of the problem is even if the government was unified and tried to do a lockdown, a lot of people are reaching their sort of psychological limit, and it is hard to tell a lot of people. I mean, you can tell me this, and I'm fine. A lot of people are fine with this, but a lot of people aren't. That I just went to hockey games and now you're telling me I can't anymore? Just like it's hard to explain to people the vaccine doesn't protect you 100% against Omicron, but you still need it because it protects you to a huge degree. That nuance is just impossible for a lot of people to handle.
And people don't, value life over other things, right? I mean, look at you, skiing, not valuing your life over the joy of skiing.
Yeah, skiing is way less dangerous than biking. Mr. doesn't value his own life.
That's right. And then you have people who, their fear level of things is not related to the actual
case in point. Imagine being afraid of a terrorist in the United States when you are way more likely to be hit by a car while biking.
Exactly. Same deal. Right?
Cars can't get me on the slopes, just saying.
People's fear level.
No, Scott, I will say this. Right? If a car hits me while I'm skiing, you are welcome to laugh at my funeral.
Well, the point is, right, while I choose to bike, right, whenever I bike and there's cars, I'm terrified the whole time. My fear level is directly aligned.
Well, case in point, when I'm skiing on a normal trail, it's like whatever. But if I'm in the trees doing something serious, you know what's going through my head? Turn left, turn right, don't die.
Right. My fear level is in alignment with, or at least relatively, more in alignment with the actual odds and risks of danger, right? Whereas I think for a lot of people, right, their, desires will cause them to intentionally or for, many, many reasons, right? Their, illogicalness, ignorance, all kinds of reasons, their fear is not in alignment with the actual risks, right, and
Mhm.
consequences. So people will be really afraid of, and sometimes it could even be like a phobia, like you're just afraid of heights, even though you're perfectly safe in like a glass overhang that won't fall down, right? It's one of those buildings with the overlook thing,
Yep.
right?
But there is also
It's
a
like-
secondary problem of a lot of people just don't consume a significant amount of external information on a daily basis and just don't know things.
Right. So it could be, the ignorance, phobias, desires, making, it's like I want this so bad that I'll change my feelings on it, right? So many reasons.
Of course, actually, in the US,
You want to get your, I think what you just need to do is, you can't control anyone else, but think about yourself and assess risks of things, not just, disease, but everything in life, and get your fear in alignment with reality, right? Be afraid of things that are likely to happen and will cause severe damage, and be less afraid of things that are unlikely to happen and probably won't do that much damage if they do happen.
Yep. And one of those things right now is COVID. Like, this is the calm before the storm. You think it's bad now? We're not even close to the incubation period and the long tail of what's going to happen from the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, in some other
we can stay inside and podcast.
Totally
safe.
extremely shitty news. So the president of Square Enix made a huge announcement and wrote this giant
New Year's announcement.
Yep. But this New Year's announcement was notable in that 100% of it was cryptocurrency NFT bullshit.
Pretty much, yeah.
It actually, earnestly, I'm not even being hyperbolic here, argues that people who play games for fun are kind of not the demographic that games should go after, and that the real world is games where you play to earn as opposed to play for fun. It is just, it was sickening.
If you're a game company and you want to make a lot of money, that's absolutely correct.
I don't know if it'll actually make a lot of money, though.
You don't make that much money from people who are playing for fun. You make you make money from people who are addicted or psychologically.
Some gotcha. Look at that Genshin Impact, which you should not play. That game is unethical. That game is probably more harmful to society right now, and also makes way more money than a lot of games you can just buy and play for fun.
Yeah, it's that's how you make a lot of money. If you make a game if you were to make Mario 3 today, it's and even, and assuming it was, as technologically advanced relative to the time.
Well, with inflation, that game would cost $240.
Yeah, but regardless, it's you would maybe, even if you sold a big pile of copies, right? It's okay, everyone bought Mario, 10, and then that's it. And then, the end, right?
But Square Enix, what's interesting is there's a big shift, because if you look at the three, we skipped a bunch of episodes at the end of the year. We didn't even talk about Kickstarter literally destroying itself and moving to blockchain yet. But basically, we saw it with Discord. The first wave was Discord hinted at supporting NFTs, and the blowback from Discord users was so severe that they actually walked it back.
Yeah, well, I think every company, that has, showed their hand got blowback, and some of them stand firm, and some of them walk it back. So some of them didn't make it. Some of them didn't, say anything to begin with.
So Kickstarter was the next one where they got blowback and they doubled down. I cannot believe that I got an email from Kickstarter support that used the term fiat currency to tell me why I'm wrong and my concerns about NFTs and cryptocurrency and blockchain are wrong and I should keep using Kickstarter.
Well, guess what? I'm never kickstarting anything ever again.
Yep. In fact, the only reason I haven't deleted my Kickstarter account is I'm waiting on...
I already kickstarted something.
I'm waiting on Court of Blades and I think John Company 2 are the last two I have outstanding.
And the vast majority of things I've kickstarted, I've had a Kickstarter account since the beginning. I've kickstarted hundreds of things.
Yep.
But yeah, most of the things I kickstart these days are indie tabletop RPG PDFs and such, and none of those are going to be a Kickstarter anymore.
In fact, I can... That industry, the tabletop industry as a whole, basically collectively announced almost simultaneously they will never use Kickstarter again.
That's right. So I don't have to worry about kickstarting anything new. So I'm just going to wait for all the Kickstarters I have.
I got 2 left.
Come through, and then delete the account.
So you have Discord, which went, oh shit, and backed off. You have Kickstarter, which when people complained, basically told the children that they are wrong and doubled down. And then now you have Square Enix coming in with the in before. Their announcement was basically, we know many of you have concerns, and we don't give a fuck. Like they came out already with the punches thrown. Mm-hmm. This is going to get real bad, and I think it's going to destroy big swaths of the game industry over the next few years.
I'm actually, I don't want to say this is a prediction, right? So much more as a hopeful possibility for a long-term deal is that I see a movement of people who are buying in and going on the blockchain.
And those people are unilaterally all in on all of this. And I think they're the same people who would have fallen for the Amway scam if they were a kid in the 80s or the 90s.
I see a majority of people who don't even know what's going on, don't care, and just carrying on. And then I see another group of people, my people, who are basically going back to the old ways, right? There's this pushback of let's go back to Web 1, right? Websites with no ads and no bullshit on them. Things like Project Gemini, right? Or IRC instead of Discord, right? It's like, what do we need all this shit for? Let's just go back that we had it right the first time, guys. Right? Let's even sort of in betweens, like, okay, we have better computers now, we have phones now, we can do these things better, but adhere to the principles and such of the old ways.
Well, I think there's something I think you're right. That reactionary movement is going to be a big movement. I agree with you. Right. I actually have the same prediction. But I think there's something more. There's something much more.
When those services made by that group of people, right, become, more widely available and accessible to just the general public, they'll absorb some of that middle group of people just carrying on, right? You'll get some people just carrying on with Twitter going over to old school Twitter replacement, right?
Yep.
Or, and
Twitter's actually not that bad compared to everything else.
Sure. But what I could see happening is that movement of people going to the old ways, that will be hard to, that's going to work, right? It's like, there won't be that many people there, but they're not going to be easily destroyed, right? It's like, because the old ways are resilient ways. The people going to the blockchain land, that's going to beanie baby crash at some point. Who knows when? It might last a long time, but it's gonna fail because it's not sustainable, right? Given just the realities of silicon.
But remember, there's something just far more fundamental going on that will be a threat to everything you're describing. The only reason this NFT blockchain stuff is happening, and because it's permeating every industry, the reason is capitalism has finally hit its sort of late stage final form in that the only way to continue infinite growth is with an asset that is 100% disentangled from reality.
Yeah, it's you've squeezed the sponge dry. How can we possibly make more money? We're already exploiting our workers and our customers and our suppliers.
And remember,
where can we get more profits from?
Right? The crypto bros.
Let's scam people. Right?
Because crypto bros, what they're doing is not building wealth or decentralizing anything. The sole reason anyone is doing this is that they're trying to make a brand new modern land rush so they can all buy that limited, I'm making quote noises and rolling my eyes as my soul dies, that limited resource on the ground floor and be the future robber barons. They all think they're going to be the new Rockefeller with their monkey JPEG.
I think that's some of it, but I also think the reason that a lot of those people do it is because, imagine I believed in it, right? So if I believed in it, that means that I could go and start a business, and all I do is A, buy video cards. That's something I love doing. B, build computers, making a big, giant computer system. I love doing that. That's fun, right? And then C, it just prints money.
Like a Captain Planet pollution machine. It just spits out pollution and money.
I don't have to deal with customers. I don't have to. All I have to do is build a computer and make it as big as I can.
But that
just get it's like this dream job. That's the dream that's been there since the 90s, where they had run this program on your computer that shows you ads and will send you free money.
Yep, I ran 100 copies of that software and I didn't see the ads.
The goal of capitalism is to escape capitalism, and this has the the fake money deal, right, has created this, pathway that people believe in where, hey, I could make money. The computer will just make money. I won't have to work. The computer will make money for me. And that dream has been around so long, will never die, because it's basically trying to shortcut your way to beat capitalism, right? So to win capitalism, you have to be Jeff Bezos. So much money that you don't have to work anymore. That's the real winning at capitalism. There's this sort of shortcut victory where I have found a way to make money without working.
Yep.
Right. And so this offers that possibility. And if anything ever offers that possibility, right, people are always going to do it unless it is regulated.
Yep.
Right. Like crime is a way to make money without having to work. Right.
I would say I think it's more ethical.
People who go commit crimes, you just have money.
As long as your crimes are robbing the right people, you are probably less morally wrong to be a criminal than you are to mine NFTs.
Right. But I think, it's true that there's the robber baron thing going on.
Well, I think they're split. The robber baron people are the
who believe in it, I think, and believe that they're going to make money without working, or it's not just one of the coworkers who quit was like, I'm going to go mine. I'm like, I didn't even know.
I know people.
I'm
going to say this. I think there's two groups of people, because I know some people who have done just that, because they're Wall Street people. They quit their jobs. They just have a mining rig that they put like upstate New York somewhere, and it is just printing money.
Mm-hmm.
They're just doing it. But most people don't have the IT skills to make that happen, or the seed capital to make it happen. Those are the people.
You've also just got people who, they're not people who had a job. Maybe they're people who didn't have a job, right? It's like
those people are mostly speculating on the investments and are part of the wash trade scam part of this, as opposed to the mining part.
You think about, other nerdy things, right? Like, I think back, who was buying and selling comic books? Who was selling their games back to GameStop? Who was buying and selling Magic cards at the game store, right?
Yep.
The people who just didn't have a lot of money, right? And they didn't have a job. They were hustling and doing scams and, making money in that way. And
do you think I wanted to sell Final Fantasy 1 back to FuncoLand? No, I was just desperate for cash.
Right. Those same people are the people who are doing NFTs. It's like, I can't get a job, or I don't have a job. My job sucks. Right. I need money to live. So here's a scam. I can run this scam. All I got to do is click on things and, money gets moved. Why would you buy a GameStop stock? You click on something and you can make money just by clicking. Right.
Yep.
It's like, that is the same people doing all those GameStop, Magic card comic book deals.
So anyway, to bring this back around so we can,
just by going to the GameStop.
To move on to other gaming news, the thing that's important here is fuck Square Enix, just boycott them, for real. And
it's not. I haven't bought a Square Enix thing in a long time. Anyway.
Yep. And never use Kickstarter again for any purpose. Absolutely do not use Kickstarter, because the one power we have is that some huge companies are going to support this stuff on the side, like big banks and things, but you can't win those fights. But smaller companies, you can force them into bankruptcy or otherwise significantly harm them and poison the well to make it harder for other companies to make their announcements. So my advice is, fight the battles against these crypto bros that you can win. We can win against Kickstarter. They're going to go under. We can win against Discord. They gave up. Can't win against some giant international bank. They're going to fall. They're going to deal with it in a much different way. So fight the battles you can win and boycott the companies that you can win against.
All right.
So
enough of that.
Yeah. One last little gaming news. This is a sports news, but it's
how much time we going here?
Oh, we haven't gone that long. So, there is a high school football team. This was making the rounds for a while, but in December...
This is multi-year-old news.
In December...
This is pre-COVID news.
The investigation completed. But I realize a lot of people haven't seen this story.
The investigation confirmed what we already knew to be true.
So I'm going to read this one sentence that is the final determination, and it'll raise a lot of questions for you. Quote, "The Ohio Department of Education has stated that Bishop Sycamore High School is a scam and a way for students to play football in hopes of increasing their chances of playing at the college level." There was a fake fucking high school that ringers were playing in to try to play football professionally.
Right. So basically, this is an old story, but basically, yes, someone made a sports team and they called it, Sycamore High School or whatever, even though no such high school existed, and they got people who were going to play football, and they scheduled games against other real high school football teams, in an attempt, to like, scouts, right? Football scouts might see them play. You can scam people into thinking that you have this avenue for them to like, get into the NFL or whatever, without having to actually go to high school, right? Or maybe they're older than high school, right? You're not eligible, but now you don't have to go to college either. You can just play on this high school.
And legally, it was a real school because private schools can basically just found on nothing because America's broken. So
basically, it was just a football team that called itself high school, scheduled games against other high schools, and what happened was one of their games got scheduled to broadcast on like, ESPN, whatever, at some weird time, at something, somehow, right? Because, and two, they got like blowed up. Like
that's what blew the scam. The scam wasn't that they were succeeding and made this fake avenue for like sports stuff. The scam was tricking kids and parents into paying them to join this fake team to get their kids into the NFL. And that game was 58-0. Right. And that sparked investigations.
They got destroyed by this other high school, and it was on ESPN, so everyone saw it happening. And then people, so that, sports, news people looked into it for a second and said, wait a minute, there's no such, where is this high school? I can't find it on Google Maps, right? What is going on here? And then that brought some justice department in the state to be like, all right, what's going on here? Right? It's like,
but
something's up.
The reason I bring this up as news, you can read the article for all the details because it's just fascinating. Like there is.
Yeah, it took them how many years to investigate this, right? It's like there's probably, meanwhile, 20 other people running the same scam who just aren't on ESPN. Getting away with it.
But I guess the point is, if there is any extrinsic incentive in any sort of game, people will absolutely go to extreme lengths to cheat in order to get whatever that extrinsic motivation is. If there's money, if there's power, if there's fame, people will cheat.
Yep.
All right. Actually, we hit the midpoint at a good point. So let me just jump 2 things of the day. We'll go quick on that. All right. But anyway, things of the day. So you can read this article. I'm not going to share all the details because they're great to read. But, Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, his body is just like there to look at, like it's preserved.
Yeah, right. If you go to the Kremlin, it's like right nearby. It's in the same area.
I'd like to go see it someday, honestly.
I've never been there, but I know I've seen pictures.
I had on 2 different points in my life planned trips to Russia that I had to cancel for, in both cases, actually strange reasons. But anyways, I've never actually been to Russia. But
I don't think we're gonna be going to Russia.
Oh no, I mean, not that it's a good Geek Nights topic for a Tuesday, but if you didn't read the news, Russia was literally planning to invade Ukraine like next week, and the only reason they're likely not going to is that the U.S. exposed this, and there's a bunch of ridiculous drama going on in Europe that you should probably at least keep an eye on. But anyway, Lenin's body was not intended to be preserved. It was just going to be buried in a tomb like any state leader. But for a bunch of reasons that you can learn about by reading this article if you didn't know, the Russian government ended up preserving his body, and this talks about the ridiculous lengths Russian scientists and technicians have gone through over the years to continue to maintain Vladimir Lenin's body. It is fascinating.
I'm sure that at the original time, right, over 100 years ago already, right, they preserved it, to the best of their abilities. Right. And I guess there was, but then once you've got it there in this sort of tourist attraction, national monument slash national monument place, it's like, well, now we're stuck with this, right? It's like we can't be like, all right, that's enough looking at Lenin, let's put him underground now. Right? They had to stick with it, so they had to keep basically getting the best embalming, body preservation, taxidermy, whatever known to man, and keep reapplying it constantly to keep this place open. And so that's exactly what they've done.
Yep. So seriously, read this article about this 145-year-old weird mummy thing. It is fascinating.
Yep.
So what do you got?
What
the robots?
Do I have? So I don't know much about farming, or especially not pig farming, other than don't trust a man who raises pigs.
Yep.
But I did see this video advertising some actual legitimate farm equipment that you can buy and might be very useful if you run a pig farm. Specifically the boar bot, but there are other devices.
I could see uses for several of these at nerd conventions.
Quite possibly. But yeah, this company, right? They make a Swine Robotics. They make several different robots that would be very useful if you run a pig farm to do things like, take your boar and have it like pull itself around to go meet all the lady pigs and figure out which ones are in heat or whatever, right? Clean all these like plastic boards that apparently they have to like separate pigs or something. I don't fucking know what they're doing, but they've got a machine that washes like many plastic boards very, very quickly, among others. But the boar bot in particular is just really entertaining. Right? I'm sure it's like really run of the mill and boring for anyone who actually knows about farming or works on a farm. But as a nerd who thinks robots are cool and doesn't know anything about farming, there is a element of humor and also, coolness to the products made by
Well, like I've been saying a lot,
Robotics Company.
existing technology implemented to solve real problems is way more valuable to society than bleeding edge technology used to solve bleeding edge problems.
Yeah, and it's also kind of funny. It's like you look at this, it's like how many options do they have for this? It's like it's sort of like configuring a PC if you want to buy one.
Yeah.
It's like you can get the bigger model, the smaller model, right? But it also, right, like if you believe their advertising, if you operate your farm with these instead of, I guess, whatever old-fashioned non-robot method, it's apparently better for the animals, right? And better for the safety of the people. It's like a supposedly. I don't know.
Well,
maybe it's worse. I don't know anything about farming. I just know it's a cool video.
anyway, in the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, The Tale of Genji, I continue to steamroll along. I'm willing to do the episode at the end of January if you are. First week of February?
I am likely to finish the book by the end of January. I think the Kindle was lying to me about the percentage because I looked and I've got like less than 10 chapters left, but it's like, oh, you're only like 50-something% done. But I looked at the page numbers and it's like, I think you're lying.
Yeah.
I think I'm a lot close. I think it's including some appendices in its estimation.
I've been burned by that so many times.
Yeah, I crossed I read it a whole lot. I've crossed major thresholds in the plot here.
I assume Genji is no longer with us.
Most likely.
Oh, you're just getting to that part? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I think I am going to finish this book. The end is in sight. Like, it's not like, oh, there's a mountain over there somewhere. It's like, oh, I can see the mountain on the horizon. I'm going to get in there.
Let's plan on doing that episode first week of February. How's that?
Are you going to finish it?
Yeah, easily.
Are you just going to give up and be like,
I'm actually, once I got like into a groove on it, I'm really enjoying reading it. Really, I said, it was the point when I stopped trying to do lit crit and just read it like a soap opera.
So I have an idea, actually, right? How can we possibly do justice to a book that
I'm trying to take notes on like my top 10 favorite moments.
Right. How can we possibly do justice to a book that took us who knows how many years to read, right? So I was thinking...
We're canceling Geek Nights. We're going to do a 2-year-long Genji podcast.
We could kill a few birds with one stone, right? The fact that we, never know what to talk about on Thursday. I think we could do at least 2 episodes, if not 3, on this book by breaking it down as we got to talk about the actual story in the book.
Yep.
Right. And then we can do a second episode that's meta, but the meta could, if we want to, be broken into 2 episodes itself, because this is the first meta, which is, this is the first novel ever, right? Let's look at where novels came from, right? Look at what was the same, what was different in terms of, writing all that long ago. And the second meta is just, the historical meta, like what was going on at that time. Clearly, this is not a true story with ghosts and shit, right? But
I mean, the ghosts are just malaria.
Right. But you can learn about what life was like at that time from this book as much as you can learn about like the 80s by watching Dirty Dancing, right? Which is not a true story, but you learn a lot about what was going on in the 80s.
It may not be true, but it speaks to truth.
Right, exactly. So, we could get 2 to 3 episodes out of this.
I feel like 2 because I have a extremely superficial knowledge of Heian era Japan to the point that I have learned from reading this book more about Heian era Japan than I knew before going in.
That's true. That's true.
I knew
as well.
very little.
Do you think? I wonder if this is probably like never going to happen. But it came to me in the shower. Right, the guy who translated it, the Royale Tyler guy. A, is he alive? B, would he come on GeekNights? C, is he a good person that would actually be good to talk to? I mean,
I feel like we should.
Knowledge.
The next, the translation we read of the Odyssey, I feel like that's the kind of person you want to get on GeekNights.
Yeah, she would be amazing.
Emily Wilson?
Yeah. But I don't know if, like, Royal Tyler clearly has the knowledge because he translated this whole fucking thing. But I don't know what kind of person he is, if it would make a good episode or not. Or if he's even alive. I don't know. Anyway.
All right. Otherwise, we are not going to be at MAGFest. Obviously, you shouldn't be either. Like, seriously, do not fucking go to MAGFest right now. The panel I did at PAX Unplugged during that brief window when I felt comfortable going to a con for 2.5 hours and I'm wearing a mask on stage is on YouTube. And otherwise, we're working on a bunch of Geek Nights stuff, both of us. Scott more heavily than me right now because Scott's work is way more important. But I'm working on some things around panels that we might just do outside of cons because might not be any cons for the foreseeable future.
He's alive, but he's like 86 years old.
All right, let me put a marker. Just jump into the main bit. All right. And I'm going to record this to put a marker because I got to turn this into the standalone, just the main bit YouTube thing, which are really popular actually for our game reviews. All right. So during this whole pandemic, one thing we haven't been doing is playing a lot of tabletop board games for a lot of reasons you can imagine. Mostly playing 18xx games because they're easy to do asynchronously. Occasionally playing a game on like TTS or something, but not that often. So
even if we got together, right? The supply chain's hurting the board gaming people, so.
Yep. But it just so happened there's a recent game from 2020, The Lost Ruins of Arnak, or Arnak, or Arnak, which is moderately popular, got a pretty high rating on Board Game Geek right now. And also, it happens to be supported on Board Game Arena. So the stars came together and we played it the other day. I've only played it once.
I had a friend who learned it and went out of their way to teach it to us, and that helped a lot.
Yep. Designed by Min Elwin.
So this game is a game that combines basically two of the biggest mechanics in the Eurogaming world: deck building, like Dominion, and worker placement, like every worker placement game ever, Agricola, right? So we had already previously played a game that did a similar thing, the same combination, which is Dune Imperium. I don't think we did a show on it.
Nope, because I got to play that one again before I have an opinion that I'm going to share publicly.
Just because we didn't do a show right away, so it wasn't fresh in our minds.
Not just that, but our first playthrough had several errors and issues that I need to play again with knowledge to decide if I like the game or not.
I need to reread the rules. It's been so long. But Ruins of Arnak, we just played it the other day, and it was much simpler and easier to comprehend in our minds. It's much more streamlined, and whatnot. So I don't feel like we need to play it again to do an episode. We can't obviously talk about how to win.
Yep.
Especially not the way I played. I played like trash.
Yep. I did okay. But I was basically doing what the player who won was doing, but one round behind him. So
yeah. But yeah, so obviously, it take the two biggest mechanics of Eurogaming and combine them into one game. That's obviously a great idea. It's going to be a winner. I enjoyed both of those games. So I don't know if there's any other games that have attempted that combo. I expect more to come. But both of those games I enjoyed. Ruins of Arnak, I think, was like the more accessible. The theme is obviously less fun because it's not Dune. There's no worms and whatnot.
Yep. But it's just. The game is very elegant for this kind of game. Like, you're mashing all these mechanics together, but they're matched together pretty elegantly. It's a very fast play once you know the rules. Like, this is a 20 to 30 minute game among people who can take their turn.
It's a fast play is for two reasons. Number one, it does the thing I like where on your turn you do an action and then it's the next person's turn. You don't take your whole goddamn turn route and then everyone else takes a nap, right? You do one action, then it goes around, and then you do one action that goes around like Ticket to Ride. So that makes it feel faster because you're doing actions and you're not waiting too much. And 2, the game is always a set number of rounds, and it's not that many. It's like 5, 6. It's not a lot of rounds. 5 rounds. No matter what, it's 5 rounds.
Yep.
So you're really only taking, and especially in the early rounds, you're taking like 2 actions. In the later rounds, maybe 6 or 7, not that many actions. And you've got 2 workers, and that's all you ever get. You start with 2 workers and end with 2 workers.
Yep, so it sidesteps a fundamental issue with most worker placement games is that if they're not designed extremely well, the get more workers action ends up being the most important thing in the game, and that tends to cause certain styles of play that aren't actually that fun.
In Ruins of Arnak, you are, there are some actions where you don't need workers, but of the actions that you do need workers, the big actions, you basically have 10 actions the whole game. That's it. It's take 10 actions, game over. So it's going to be a quick one, and each action is going to matter a lot.
We'll get back to that. Some actions don't need workers because that actually really adds to this game. And what I would compare this game the most to, of all the games I could say, I don't know if you'll agree, but I played this game more. It does a lot of what Everdell does in terms of your directional heuristics, but it does them so much better.
I mean, I think I got to compare it the most to Dune Imperium still, which is another game that is worker placement and deck building.
So basically, the theme is a typical, you're exploring some ancient ruins in some forgotten continent somewhere.
Sort of, fantasy, archaeology, Indiana Jones deal. You know the theme.
But the game, at least, it makes it clear it's not a real world place. Nor are there any people there at all. Like, they're very explicit about that. And there is a temple with ridiculous magic nonsense in it, and you're the first people ever setting foot here, basically.
Yeah. But you're still looting an ancient or lost civilization that just, of some kind.
Yeah. So basically, you've got this board that has some near areas that are like a base camp, some kind of far away areas, and some really far away areas. And then an exploration like track on the right. So on the first part, you can spend movement actions to put a worker in one of these places, and the further away it is, the harder it is to get to. And there can be monsters, and there's resources, and you're basically
there will be monsters.
Yeah, you're basically opening up more spaces to put workers to get resources and also get victory points. And then the track is the most fascinating thing because it's really the core of the game. You're basically spending resources to move your book and your magnifying glass up this track. And there's different paths through the track that require different resources. A little bit Clank-like in that regard, like spend 2 arrowheads and a ruby to move from this space to this space. And the shtick is that as you move the magnifying glass up, you get increasing numbers of victory points. It's clearly the primary way to get victory points, and whoever gets to places first gets additional boons, and then there's some endgame scoring at the top. Moving your book up gives you way fewer victory points, but it gets you powers on your own board, and the sort of interesting, fun mechanic there is you can never move your book past your magnifying glass. And all that combined...
Right. The magnifying glass symbolizes like you're investigating, right? You're looking at artifacts, you're look, right? And then the book symbolizes you're recording your findings, right?
Yep.
Publishing what you've learned for the world, right?
Which you could choose to just never move your book. Just explore on your own and then go home satisfied. Like, you could do that. That's a valid strategy.
Yep. You probably wouldn't win, but you can do it.
And otherwise, the only other thing on the board, really, is a track that has artifacts and items that you can buy. Artifacts and items are basically just cards that you put into your deck. The deck building is important, but the deck you build is extremely small.
Yeah, so the items are basically early in the game, the card market is mostly items. And the item cards are not very powerful. Some of them can be, and if you get good combos and whatnot. But they do good stuff, right? But they're also easy to get, and you just sort of play them. The artifact cards are very powerful, and when you buy one, it activates immediately.
Yep.
Right? But if you draw an artifact again later, after you bought it, it activated immediately. It eventually makes its way into your deck. You draw it again. If you want to play it again, you actually have to spend a tablet resource every time you play one. And so it's harder to get the repeat effect on the artifacts. And as the game goes on, that card market where you can get new cards from shifts to basically consist of more artifacts and less items. So it's like eventually at the end of the game, it's like, yeah, first of all, it's late in the game. Why are you even buying items? They're so weak.
Yep.
But also, it's like, here's more artifacts to choose from late in the game. Go ahead. And especially if you buy them late in the game, you probably will never draw them. You're just going to buy them, get their immediate effect. And they are worth victory points. Even though the most victory points comes from the magnifying glass, there are pretty much everything you do gives some number of victory points.
And a good thing about this game, 1 victory point matters, and 3 victory points is kind of like the unit of significant advancement. Like 3 victory points is a big fuck you to everyone else at the table, but 1 victory point could easily make or break the game for you.
Yep, sure enough.
So the cards in your deck are interesting too, because remember what we said earlier. You have 2 workers, but you could take more than 2 actions. Some actions require you put a worker down to do a thing. Usually the worker things involve getting resources. And cards can be used as free actions to do a thing, usually give you a resource of a particular type. But they can also do other things depending on what the card says. And you keep going around, taking turns until you pass. Once you pass, you're out. So you could use all your cards first, and then use your 2 workers. You could use a worker to do a thing, use a bunch of cards, then use your second worker to do a thing that you couldn't have done before. You could mess up and not have any workers left, and then there's a thing you really wanted to do that someone else unlocked or changed the state of the game. So you're always having this decision of what do I do and how do I limit my options, because every action you take severely limits what additional remaining actions you can take in a given turn. So
the 2 workers that you have, basically the actions they do are the ones in the middle of the board, right?
Yep.
Go explore a new spot, go collect resources from the camps at the bottom, the easy free spots, fight a monster, right? Those sorts of things. You could only do that twice per turn, right? And that's it. You got the 2 workers at the end. The moving the magnifying glass, that's just spending resources. You spend resources and you move it. That's just an action, right? Buying a card, you just get the resources and you just buy the card from the market. You don't need a worker to do that.
But it is your action. So, for example, if you have no valid actions on your turn, you are forced to pass, even if you didn't want to. So you might do actions that make sure you have additional possible actions to stay in the round, hoping someone else will do something, waiting for a new item to come out. There's a lot of surprising tactical depth for how simple this game is because of that. The other thing this does...
There's that typical balance, right? Normally, in a worker placement game, a lot of them tend to either swing in one direction or the other, right? One direction being, I want to get my workers out first to get the spots before they get blocked. Because yes, indeed, in this game, if someone else went to that spot, you can't go there. But also, some worker placement games, you're like, well, I kind of want to hold out to the end. I have the most information, right? Then I can run wild with my workers, right, on whatever remains, blocked or not blocked. In this game, you're sort of, since it goes around and around and around, you're sort of in this constant, struggle between the two, right? If I put up my workers quickly... right, 1, 2, then that's sort of it, and I won't be able to respond to anything else that happens, but I'll get what I wanted. But if I hold out, well, yeah, sure, you're going to get more info, maybe get what you wanted, right? So you actually have both pressures at once, whereas then I think in a lot of other worker placement games, only one of the 2 pressures is present at any given time.
But the most important thing this does is that the way these actions play out and the way the magnifying glass and book track works, where you're limited, is once you move onto a space, you can only move to other adjacent spaces as you go up. So it's constraining what resources you will need, which reduces the cognitive load of considering all the possible options. If all your biz doesn't need rubies to advance, you don't need to worry about rubies on the board, most likely. So you can avoid some of the analysis paralysis that happens with more open games.
There's only three, there's 2 resources, right? The compass and what's the other one?
Well, there's compasses, there's gold, there's rubies, and there's arrowheads. And tablets.
So compasses are mostly used for traveling, to get your workers to go to more distant places, right?
But some artifacts use them. Some other things use them.
Gold is mostly used for getting cards, right? So those are like early game resources that mostly are used to build up your engine. The other 3 resources, the tablet, the ruby, and the arrowhead, are sort of the victory point, move your magnifying glass, do research resources, right? Which are mostly used for that purpose. But then each resource has a little bit of extra, right? It's like towards the top of the track. For victory points, you're eventually going to need some compasses to go with the magnifying glass, right? To play an artifact card, like I said before, you're going to need a spare tablet resource left over from somewhere. So they do mix it up, a little bit with the costs to keep it interesting. It's not like locked in.
They even have a really clever win more at the very end of the game. If you make it to the top of that track, there's like this pyramid of extra victory points you can buy out of, where there's 3 places that require different amounts of resources, and you can buy 1, 2, or 3 of them in any combination every round if you somehow are sitting up there with extra resources at the end of the game.
I guess the last thing is that every card, in addition to having like an effect of some kind, if it's like an item, right? Or, even like the basic cards the game just gives you from the start, like you can spend them for free to get a compass or a gold or whatever. Every card has some sort of travel possibility on it.
So, boots, boats, cars, planes.
Right, boots, boats, cars. So it's like when you want to send your worker out into the world, not only do you need enough compasses to get them where they're going, so you have to get those compasses from somewhere. You also have to have, play cards with enough correct transportation symbols. So now you can't use those cards for what their effect was, because you had to use those cards to make the worker go to the spot that you wanted. And so then you get some tough choices as well, right? Sometimes you might pick up a crappy item just because, well, I'll use it as an airplane on it, right? Whatever. So you might be forced to be like, oh, I really want to play this good item, but that's the only way I can get that worker out is to use it as a boat. And well, if I don't do that, then the worker won't even get used this turn. What do I do?
So this is sort of where the reason I want to compare and contrast this a little bit to Everdell is that Everdell, while it's a very different game, this game and Everdell share a few very core heuristics in that in the early game, you're buying items and sort of either collecting resources or collecting ways to collect resources. And in the later game, you're doing victory points and other stuff. But the big difference is Everdell, as you get into later phases of the game, the possibilities open up and explode and cause extreme analysis paralysis. But in this game, your options are constrained by the decisions you have made up to this point, so it never opens up enough for you to get just completely overwhelmed with options. If you're in a spot where you need a ruby and you don't have a ruby, you fucked up. You should have gotten a ruby. You could see it coming the whole time.
I do think that is a problem for just many games in general, right? Is that, you think about something like Monopoly or
characteristics of the games, it's bushiness. The concept of bushiness. You cannot have a game where bushiness increases over time. That will greatly extend the length of that game.
A lot of games, the bushiness goes up and up and up and up, like Civ 6, any Civ really. Towards the end of the game, the bushiness is huge. You got a ton of cities, a ton of units. It's just like, it's too big, right? You got to deal with all this crap, right? And usually early in games, you don't want to start people out with like a whole pile of resources right at the beginning. It's like you didn't earn it. So the bushiness is small in the beginning. And
like a lot of train games, take a loan. That's the only thing you can do, take a loan.
Right. So I think, the ideal game is going to increase bushiness quickly, right, to get your options out.
And then winnow that bushiness down.
Right. Constrain them and push the game towards a conclusion. And this constrains you by it's hard to get a huge pile of resources and there's no engine building really, right? You don't build. There's like no way.
You might get one combo between like an assistant and an artifact, but
I tried it when I played. I tried to take the Dominion path of I'll build and make a really polished deck by.
Oh, you had the best deck by far.
Yeah, I was like, I'll clear the crap out of my deck. I'll bring in all the really powerful cards into my deck. I'll build an amazing deck, and hopefully then I'll draw this ridiculous hand of amazing cards, play them and score a pile of points, right? And the thing is, it took so long because you have so few actions to build that amazing deck. Took all 5 rounds.
Yep.
And I was never, if there were 6 or 7 rounds, I would have won for sure. But there weren't 6 or 7 rounds. There were 5 rounds. And I had not scored basically any victory points worth of shit because I couldn't get the valuable resources because I was spending my resources on polishing my deck instead. And there aren't a lot of, I had basically all the draw mechanics that you could get. And there aren't enough of them. So it's not like I was drawing cards during my turn as much as anyone could. And it wasn't enough to like play some combo. It's like you can only do so much. You start with 2 workers, you end with 2 workers. It's like that's it. Your 10 worker actions are the whole game, right? Plan those out and you're done. Jesus.
So, second point of comparison between this and Everdell. The cards are the reason the game does not fall into a stale meta. The cards are the thing that shuffles the game up. Same with Everdell. The cards are
every time.
Yep. The cards guide like what's possible, what people are fighting over, etc. But the cards do not use a lot of word language so much as they have a very simple lexicon of very straightforward actions with symbols. So it takes a couple seconds to figure out what a new card does, and no card.
As long as you have the how to play guide is necessary for some of the symbols, right? It's not quite a race for the galaxy situation, but you do need a little guide cheat sheet to understand some of the cards.
But none of the cards
symbols, you'll learn them all pretty quick.
And none of the cards do anything particularly crazy out of the bounds of what you would expect. Like if you look at 10% of the cards, you've got a good sense of what 100% of the cards are capable of.
I think we had one late game card question because there was some bad wording.
But look at Everdell.
We looked it up, and we got an answer. So
Everdell, the cards have a whole bunch of language you have to parse, and the cards interact with each other in really complex ways. That's why Everdell takes 4 hours to play. And while Board Game Geek weirdly says this game takes 30 to 120 minutes, I cannot imagine a game of this taking longer than 45 minutes.
No, I can't. It's only 5 rounds. What are you doing?
Yeah, but I like it. I like it a lot. I want to play it again, like, soon. And I think it has a lot of replay value because the cards are key. They are how you construct the decks, but you make such a small deck. I don't think this will fall into a hard meta under 10 to 12 plays. Like, I think you could get 10 or 12 plays out of this, and they would all be satisfying.
Right. I think it does, like you said, I think it has replay value. You could play this a bunch.
But you could exhaust it.
But it doesn't have the infinite replay value of like a T&E. It's like
or a Hansa Teutonica.
Right. You can play it a bunch, but then you're going to be done with it. However, it's very obvious if there aren't expansions for this already.
Well, it comes with an expansion. You flip over the board and there's like the Temple of the Snake and everything's different.
Oh, okay. So there you go. There's some replay value. But yeah, this game not only does, I guess, it come with an expansion, the Temple of the Snake, but it is ripe for further expansion.
Oh yeah, just release a deck of weird artifacts, another sideboard you can advance on, like add a 6th round.
Just put out different cards. Be like, all right, play with deck 2 instead of deck 1. It's like, it's so easy to expand this game. They absolutely will if they haven't already. I just haven't looked up whether they have already.
Yep.
And I think that's where you can get even more replay value from out of this. But, you know, even if they never release an expansion and you do play it out, you know, whatever this game costs or whatever it costs to play on Board Game Arena, I don't know if it's one of the free ones or one of the ones.
I think it's free.
There's basically the way Board Game Arena works, if people don't know, is it's a website that lets you play board games against people online, and it works. So that's really good. But the UI is really not great, but it works. And they have a lot of top tier board games on there, you know, ranging from all sorts of different weight levels and whatnot. But if you want to start a new game, like if you want to play 6-Nimmt, you can just like play 6-Nimmt on there for free. If you want to play some games, like I wanted to play, what was it called? Don't Stop or whatever, or Can't Stop. It's like, well, I didn't have a premium account. So if someone else who did have a premium account started a game of Can't Stop, they could invite me to join it.
Might just be worth it for like me to get a premium account, because looks like we're going to be locked down for a while.
You can start a new game of any game, but if you have a free account, you can only join games created by premium accounts or start games if they're free games.
I will warn you on this. if you play this on Board Game Arena, it works great, but any card, Scott got burned by this, two different players got burned by. If there's a card where you can get a resource thing or pass to get a different resource thing, you have to pass via the card. If you just click pass, you're just SOL.
Yep, that's what happened to me. That's a user interface Board Game Arena problem.
Yeah, nothing to do with the game itself. The card was really straightforward.
If we're playing in person, there's no way that can happen. Right?
Exactly. So I don't know if I would buy this game, only because, like, personally, not saying you shouldn't buy it, only because one,
it probably takes up a lot of space. It's big. It's not a small game.
Yep. I don't know when I'll be playing games in person anytime soon, but also this is the kind of game that, like, the PAX tabletop library will probably have 2 or 3 copies of, and this is the kind of game, if I was at any random PAX, I would check it out at least once and play it, like every PAX.
Yeah. Yeah, play it. Play it once, put it back. Right? It's if you're a person who has board game nights, still somehow, and you've got it only goes up to 4 players, I think.
Yeah, it goes 1 to 4. Obviously, 1 is not the same game.
2 isn't the same game either. You want 3 or 4.
Yeah, you definitely want 3 or 4. Though I think 2 is more the same game than other games because it is mostly a race.
It is mostly a race. There isn't too much player interaction other than blocking off other people's spaces with your workers and also buying cards before other people can buy them. Other than that, there's no contention and there's no player interaction. But you could make like Agricola, right? Agricola is a game that has cards, even though it's not deck building, where, there was the main deck of Agricola cards, the basic one, didn't have any player interaction. The only interaction in Agricola is blocking.
They could make a player interaction expansion.
Right. Agricola had the alternate deck with player interaction cards. They could easily, maybe those cards exist and we just didn't see them in our play, but they could easily print more cards that have player interaction, like steal a resource from a friend, or, move someone else's magnifying glass backwards, or steal someone's book.
Yeah.
You could do so much stuff with that. Take someone's monster. I don't know.
I would also say that if you like this game, you would probably like Crown of Amara in terms of...
If you like this game, you're going to like Dune Imperium, which is also deck building and worker placement.
Well, honestly, if you like this game, you're going to like a lot of classic Euros, too.
Yeah. And vice versa. It's basically just, it's a solid Euro. I don't think it's a legendary all-time game.
No, but it's just it's polished. It's well made.
It's a really solid, polished Euro.
It's balanced.
2 of the top mechanics.
The rules feel right. Like everything's elegant about it. I have no material complaints.
It's not broken. Yeah.
And seriously, if you know the rules and your friends know the rules and they're like us, this is a 30 to 40 minute game tops. You could crank out a few of these in a row.
Yep.
I do worry that setup would take a while physically, though.
You don't have to deal out like the spaces and the monsters immediately.
Oh yeah, you deal them when you land on them. So I guess it could just be.
Yeah, you could deal them when you land on them or otherwise, but it doesn't matter, right? What's the difference? There's no difference. They're face down, so who cares?
Yep.
Right?
But no, this is a solid game that I recommend. And it's not just because we haven't played a lot of tabletop games lately.
It's like a B plus, solid game, worth playing, worth owning if you got a lot of Euro players.
Yeah. I feel the same urge to play it that I feel the urge to play things like Hansa Teutonica or like Tempest, like all the games I like. Yeah. It's in the class of Games Rim likes.
Yeah. The only thing I guess that I think it's lacking game wise is that I don't feel like there's a high. Even though I sucked at it, right? It doesn't look like there's a lot of room to for mastery, right? It's like I feel like with a few more plays, I would and just knowing all the cards and such.
I feel like I could play near optimally the second time, and I feel like I could play optimally within 5 plays.
A huge luck factor and also a turn order factor, but beyond that, it's like I'm gonna be playing the best close to the best I could be playing, and there isn't a lot of room to figure out, intricacies and small details to step up my game and get even better at it. So if you play games because you're seeking strategic mastery, there's not a lot of a high skill cap and not a low ceiling, right? It's like you're gonna play it out. So
all right, I think that's a solid show. I'm gonna stop all the biz, get ready to play Blades in the Dark.
I'm gonna figure out some food.